Good morning. It's Wednesday, October 15th. The multi-front war, if it's still happening, is now 740 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. Well, he did it. Against all odds, Donald Trump wielded American strength and leverage, and he got all 20 of Israel's last living hostages home. I got up insanely early on Monday to watch it live, and I'm still feeling both exhausted and exhilarating. But let me be clear. Whatever is going on here, let's not call it peace. I hate to be the skunk at the picnic. Actually, wait, that's not true. That's my job, damn it. So let's get a few things straight. First, Hamas has not disarmed. It's killing opponents in the streets. It's not releasing the slain hostages in Gaza. Anyone surprised? This is a terrorist group. Terrorists lie and they murder. But there's also this. Hamas has been around since 1988. That means this group has been around since the release of A Fish Called Wanda, the classic movie featuring the classic line, "To call you stupid would be an insult to stupid people." Hamas is not stupid. They're doing what they can to survive. I don't blame them for trying. But if this thing collapses, Donald Trump needs to come down like a ton of bricks on Turkey and Qatar. I don't care that they helped release the 20 hostages. It was their support for Hamas that led to 2 years of war in the first place. And they vouched for Hamas in this ceasefire deal. So no, folks, let's not call Turkey and Qatar allies. Let's not forget their role in all of this. And please, let's not call what's happening right now. Let's not call it peace. Not yet. Anyway. Now for our interview. Today's guest is a repeat offender, Nadav Eyal, a columnist for Yediot Ahronot and Ynet, two popular news sites in Israel. He's also a fellow at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, or CIPA, and he's a regular commentator on Dan Senor's popular Call Me Back podcast. He's following what's happening all over Israel, across the Middle East, and it's all moving very quickly. So we thought we'd bring him on to help us unpack what's happening. So let's bring him on to the show. Welcome to the program, Nadav Eyal.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for having me again.
It's great to have you back. I got a lot to talk about with you today, and we've got a lot of time, which is good. Maybe I'll just start with this. The mood in Israel, I mean, certainly I'm seeing some healing, but I'm also seeing the return of some significant rifts that, well, let's just say they were never gone, right? The return of politics. The trial with Bibi right back in full swing. I mean, just hours after the hostages return. You got hostage families snubbing Bibi. There's talk of elections. Maybe just set the stage for us a little bit here about what's happening in this country after 2 years of conflict.
So, as always, and you said that, Jonathan, in Israel, the politics never stopped. It never stopped during the war. I think it's very unfortunate. As an Israeli, I would have wanted to see something else, but it was absolutely the case. And for the protest movement, for instance, as we've seen in that demonstration with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Ivanka Kushner also there, the moment that Steve Witkoff mentioned the name of the prime minister, you heard the reaction of the crowd. And that, as of itself, in the middle of a hostage deal, created a huge political storm in Israel. And that's also an example to how tribal the politics of Israel is. So no sugarcoating there. This is where we are at right now. It's the vibrancy of Israeli democracy. That's one way to look at this. And we are in an election year. There's no other way to put it. We're going to have an election in Israel by the end of October 26th. It's going to be up to the government to decide when exactly. And Bibi will either want this as close as possible to the deal, and he's going to make the decision probably this week or next week. So that means February in terms of just the scheduling of Israeli elections. Or he can have it in May, usually between May, June to October because of the summer and because of Israeli holidays, religious holidays. You don't have election seasons, and then you pass from May to October. So these are the three possibilities that the prime minister has there. He still has some sort of a coalition. He's actually leading a minority government right now, or sort of a minority government. He doesn't have a majority, but the ultra-Orthodox are very much with the government, although they are not in the government, and they are definitely not voting to fire the Knesset and to go to an election right now. And that's extremely meaningful. Now, what Netanyahu is looking for is to see if he's getting a bump in the polls, a real bump in the polls. And usually, conventional wisdom would say, absolutely, why wouldn't he? He has, as far as he is concerned, won the war. He has returned all the live hostages, and that's just a pure fact. Why wouldn't he see this bump in the poll? And we did see at least one poll coming from Channel 13, definitely not associated with the government, saying that the Likud is growing stronger. However, we saw some of it after the Iran campaign, after the 12-day war with Iran. And then after a week or two, it became very clear that there is absolutely no change. The needle has not moved for this coalition at all in the polls. And because of that, Netanyahu is very worried not to call for an election and then to find out that his bloc is losing big, which is practically what we have seen, not since October of 23, but even before that, with the beginning of the judicial overhaul. So that's where we are at right now. As far as the opposition is concerned, still the person who gets most numbers in the polls just with Netanyahu or against Netanyahu is Naftali Bennett. At any rate, people need to understand that the Israeli politics has moved to the right. Bennett, if any, is to the right of the prime minister. He's just not a pro-Netanyahu bloc leader. And because of that, what we're really seeing is a politics that's very much tilting towards talking about the threats against Israel, preparing for a possible campaign against Iran or against Gaza, now ruled for now by Hamas. It is ruled for now by Hamas. It's not a discussion between left and right, between territorial compromise and those say, no, Jabotinsky's iron wall. No. It's between right and to the right of the Likud and Netanyahu.
Yeah, between right and right. All right, a couple of things I want to point out here or ask you about. Number one, I was struck by that moment in Trump's speech at the Knesset where he stopped reading from the teleprompter, or at least that's what he said. And then he turned to Herzog, president of Israel, and made a direct appeal to him to drop the charges against Bibi in his corruption trial, which resumed today. How did that go over? What did you make of that moment?
First of all, it's a dramatic moment. And I think that throughout the war, it's probably Bibi's best moment personally, not nationally. He was just radiating happiness when this moment happened. And one can understand why. So he was calling, President Trump was calling on Herzog to give an amnesty to Prime Minister Netanyahu. In practical terms, this has almost never been given in Israel for offenders before their court trial has ended. So if you don't have a verdict, you don't get an amnesty from the president. That's just part of life. There was one case, the infamous case of the Shin Bet operatives that killed terrorists. And that was also a sort of a conspiracy within the leadership of the Israeli Shin Bet back in the 1980s, in which the father of this president, President Chaim Herzog, granted an amnesty to people that were never indicted and that had no verdict against them. So to give this to Netanyahu in this kind of situation is going to be highly complex for President Herzog unless Netanyahu commits, for instance, to withdraw from political life. And Herzog was very quick to respond to Israeli media, basically saying, I'm not responding to these kind of appeals. Mm-hmm. He was extremely embarrassed, as everyone could see. It's really, it was
a crazy moment. I mean, I got to say, amidst all of it, right? I mean, you're sort of watching, geopolitics at the highest level, this historic moment, and then this brief diversion into something that I mean, it was completely unscripted, and you can see the immediate reactions. That was fascinating to me. But getting back to the kind of the political matrix that we're starting to see form as elections start to come into the picture. I mean, I'm struck by this. I mean, you said it's between right and further to the right, but Bennett is like he's a pragmatist at the end of the day. This is a guy that had Arabs within his coalition. He works with Yair Lapid. These are people that are still talking about the two-state solution. How is he reconciling with kind of the mood in Israel, what he was before, and I guess what he's trying to become now? How to make sense of Naftali Bennett at this moment?
So Bennett looks like a pragmatist, but there are absolutely, in terms of the Israeli-Arab conflict, there are no evidence that he is a pragmatist. Having the Arab parties as part, Mahmoud Abbas and others, as part of his Mansour Abbas, as part of his coalition, it doesn't say that he's a pragmatist. It just says that he believes that Israeli citizens have a right to be part of their political process. In other words, he's definitely not a racist. He's not a far rightist. He's not Smotrich, Ben Gvir crowd kind of politician. But he is very to the right. And Bennett never said anything that supports Palestinian statehood, unlike this prime minister who has said that during the Obama years, who has just signed on the plan made by President Trump, the 21-point plan, that includes a path to statehood to the Palestinians. The word here is change. What Bennett represents is change. First of all, a different generation. There's an entire generation between Bennett and Netanyahu. He's younger. He is a former CEO of a tech company. What he radiates, as you said, Jonathan, is the scent of pragmatism in terms of the inner society of Israel. And he speaks the same language as Yair Lapid or even Benny Gantz, definitely Gadi Eisenkot. And that's the language of unity, of a national unity government. Now, Netanyahu, right after the war, said now is the time for healing. It's a time that we all come together. But very few people believe that he's able to do that, considering the court case against him, considering the history of it, considering the failure of October 7. There's more belief within the centrist camp of Israel that Bennett can do that. After saying that, I need to say that for the Israeli right wing, including the Likud, Bennett is really out of the question. For these people, Bennett is not the kind of guy that you would lead the bloc in order to transfer votes from the right wing or hardcore right settlements, which he was attached to. He's what we call in Israel a religious Zionist, an Orthodox who's very right wing, very supportive of the settlements. It's the settlement demographics that made him what he is. But they see in many of those demographics, and I'm speaking not anecdotally, I'm speaking based on analysis, see him as someone who betrayed the cause by forming a government with the center in Israel and stealing the votes, stealing the seats. And because of that, he has somehow become the leader of the center. So you would hear, and you would see in polls, people who are center-left believe still in Palestinian statehood, which is hard to find in Israel today, and they're voting for Bennett. Why? And that's
one of the most outspoken people in Israel against Palestinian statehood before becoming prime minister. I mean, it's dizzying. But all right, let me.
It's all about Bibi. That's my.
That's not Bibi.
It's all about Netanyahu.
Right.
It's not about
Bibi,
left. It's not about right. It's about people who either admire Netanyahu or despise Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And this election is going to be a referendum about Netanyahu.
Oh,
this is how it's being framed.
Absolutely. And Bibi is betting on this, that he has one more chance to show the world that he's electable, that the charges didn't stick, that his triumphant victory in Iran and Gaza, but of course those wars aren't over, but you can get a sense of where the narrative is going. But let me I want to ask you about the PA, because we are seeing a return of the PA in some way. I mean, I was reading this morning, the PA wants to assert itself in Rafah. It wants to be the overseer of the crossing into Gaza, what would be, I think, the most active crossing. How how does the PA reassert itself with Bibi still at the helm? I know he signed on to one of these points out of the 20 or 21 that I guess allows for the PA to at least make the case for itself. But I mean, how are we to understand the role of the PA right now? We still have a guy, Mahmoud Abbas. I mean, this guy's been in power since 2005. He's almost 90 years old. He's not a leader of the Palestinian people any longer. This is not a government, right? It's a barely functioning municipality in Ramallah. So what are we looking at here when we think about the possible return of the PA in Gaza or even in Judea and Samaria?
So first, in Judea and Samaria, there is a governance of the PA in the sense that they're running this autonomy. They're running, the school system. They're running anything from sanitation to election to, I say election, but I mean electing by the governance in Ramallah of the local leaders in different cities, big population centers of Palestinians across the West Bank, and they do have their security apparatus. If they wouldn't have that security apparatus, that leadership would already be dead. And that security apparatus is supported by Israel, but it's also assisting Israel in terms of intel. And this is a known secret. And by the way, this is the accusations leveled by Hamas against the PA, that they are collaborating with Israel, which is to a large extent very true. On the other hand, as you said, Jonathan, the PA is corrupt, it's weak, and if something happens to Abu Mazen, which at the age of 90 can very possibly happen, the common saying within the Israeli defense apparatus is, we'll need to go to more than one funeral. And what they mean is that the day that Abu Mazen dies, there will be some kind of a reckoning within the Palestinian society in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, and many other officials of the PA would be hunted down and would be executed by other groups in the Palestinian society. So yes, it's fragile. I have to say that Israel made it fragile. Israel wanted the PA to be fragile. There is a campaign of Israel against the PA, and there's a campaign, a judicial campaign, an international campaign of the PA against Israel, which is kind of weird because at the same time, Israeli generals and the Shin Bet and everyone keeps talking with the security officials in the PA and the other way around, and securing cooperation in all kinds of levels. And there are a lot of complaints from the Israelis about the PA, which I just mentioned. Now, as to the Gaza Strip, you probably remember, Jonathan, the phrase, no Hamas and no Abbas, meaning no Abu Mazen and no Hamas. Well, right now in Gaza, what we have right now is
You've got both. You've got them both.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, Netanyahu pitching this as a huge victory for all the aims that he presented is such an amazing campaigner, because this is what we've been discussing. And I'm saying he has a bump in the polls. But just in practical terms right now, until a different government assumes control of the Gaza Strip and Hamas disarms, and we hear that the PA is not going to go to Rafah and to other parts of the Gaza Strip, well, the vision to Gaza seems very much, the vision for the future seems right now, and I'm saying this, I'm not as a journalist, as a bitter journalist criticizing this, wanting the pessimist scenario to happen. No, I want the positive scenario to happen. I want to have a different government on an op-ed level in the Gaza Strip, but right now, future looks like the past.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have to say, I see it. It doesn't mean that that's where we're going to stay. But at least, 2 days after the release of the hostages and the implementation of Trump's plan, it's the changes are not occurring. Change, of course, is going to happen slowly, but it's not occurring right now. All right, let me broaden out, though. Okay, so we've just talked about Gaza, at least to some extent, but I want to look at Israel more broadly. I mean, it's still on war footing. I mean, contrary to what Donald Trump has said, peace is not broken out across the Middle East. When you look at all the different fronts, the 7 fronts that Israel is fighting, maybe 8 if you want to call Qatar the latest kinetic front, but it looks like it's all still very relevant. So are we on war footing? Are we on the path to peace? And then I guess there's this other part of it, which is I'm expecting there to be a long memory of what's just happened, right? I mean, I think a lot these days about what happened after the Munich Olympics and how Israel had this long memory of not, I mean, there was a vow not to forget who was responsible for what happened, and people were paying for years, right? So are we peacetime, wartime, Munich mentality, all of the above? How do you explain Israel's state of mind right now within the security and intelligence apparatus?
So first of all, it's true that these are very tense days because we see that Hamas is trying to test the limits of this agreement, and it's doing so with breaking the agreement as to the return of the bodies of the Israelis, the bodies that it kidnapped, or Israelis that it murdered in captivity or died during this war that it still holds to. There were 28 bodies. They returned until now 8 bodies, one of which we discovered this morning isn't the body of any Israeli hostage. And this is the kind of games that Hamas always made after signing agreements with Israel. It's testing the patience of the Israelis. It's testing the extent to which they're going to be given the backing of the White House and the international community. And I want to say something about that. What President Trump has been doing in the last 24 hours is as meaningful as the breakthrough that he has led through to in these negotiations. And what he's been doing is something very unusual for an international leader that just signed a historic agreement to at least have a ceasefire in the Middle East. Usually, they would sign this as a victory and then disappear into the horizon. And this is how the Middle East is used to work. Just see this to the credit, and then if something starts to break, it's their low-level diplomats that are going to handle this, right? But in this case, the fact that the president was speaking about this, tweeting about this, going on video, saying if Hamas breaks this, they're going to be held accountable. It's not done yet. It's very meaningful that the president did that. And the question is, will the United States be able, Jonathan, to follow through with that? Now, can Israel rebound immediately to attacking Hamas? Now it has its 20 live hostages. Hamas is trying to cheat with the bodies of the remaining hostages. There are some, to be honest, there are some problems there with some of the bodies of the Israelis that they can't find. It's natural. But Hamas isn't too motivated as far as the Western intelligence is concerned to get all the bodies back to Israel.
No, that's clear. But, it's funny. I've made the argument for the last few days that Trump can't take his foot off the gas. I mean, he has to.
Exactly.
And I think he's doing the right thing here. But there is, I'm struggling with one thing in particular. Trump, in order to seal the deal, actually sat down, or he had his people sit down with Khalil al-Hayya, the head of Hamas, right? Yeah. So in other words, this is the U.S. sitting down with a terrorist organization, recognizing it. Hamas has never had that kind of recognition before, right? I don't think we've ever seen senior American diplomats.
We did see Adam Bowler meeting them a few months ago.
Okay, I don't know how senior Adam is, but you add Kushner and Witkoff, and this was direct engagement at the highest level of the U.S. government, right? Sitting down with an arch terrorist who was in fact involved in the planning of the 10/7 attacks, yes. Right? And they're acknowledging him on the one hand, and on the other hand, telling him that he needs to essentially disassemble his terrorist organization, disarm it, and end all of this. So this is at the same time, it's Hamas's most important recognition and the moment that they're supposed to break apart. Have we mixed our messages here? Have we muddied the waters as we try to bring this to an end?
Look, as an Israeli, I don't want Hamas to get any sort of recognition, intuitively speaking. However, if this is what needs to be done to broker a deal, it's not that the United States took Hamas from the list of terror designated organizations. It's not that, there's an image of an American official shaking the hands with a Hamas official saying, we support the cause. If they needed to hear from the US administration that the war can really be over and that they have the word of the president for that, if they keep their side of the bargain, which is disarming, if this is what it takes to get the hostages back home, as an Israeli, and personally speaking, fine by me. Fine by me. It's not about the political heat they're going to get back home. There's nothing there that happened in that meeting, according to the reporting by, I think, Barak Ravid about that meeting, in which they said anything but, we're going to be fair if you keep the agreement, which is, again, fine. Look, if Hamas is willing to disarm and be demilitarized and be a political movement, this is what Israel is aiming for Hezbollah to do in Lebanon. Nobody thinks that Hamas is going to disappear. It's not in the war goals of Israel's cabinet that Hamas will cease to exist. Unfortunately, for the Palestinian society, as well as for the Israelis, Hamas is a grassroots movement in the Palestinian society. Not a good testament to the Palestinian society as far as I'm concerned, but I'm an Israeli. If they're willing to let go of the idea of armed resistance, that's a major breakthrough in the Middle East. Now, speaking with the officials I'm speaking with and the experts for Hamas that I'm speaking with, I just finished a conversation with one of them this morning, just before we started this conversation. They're telling me there is no way in hell that these people will actually let go of the idea of an armed struggle. And if this is the case, and they're going to start rebuilding, Israel needs to, on the short term, be ready to not self-delude itself and to attack again. Whatever the cost.
That's not going to sit well. That's not going to sit well with Trump. It's not going to sit well with the Arab world. All those leaders that just assembled in Sharm el-Sheikh.
That's the challenge for the Israeli leadership. That's why. That's why they are in their jobs to do exactly that. The moment they get the first piece of intelligence that they're building the first rocket, if they don't do that, we have learned nothing from October 7th.
Well, and this is, I guess, the October 8th mentality meets the Trump ceasefire. This is going to be some tension here. One last question before I let you go, Nadav. You've been very generous with your time. The prospect, you mentioned it up front, prospect of another conflict with Iran. It's real. I mean, the Iranian regime is not, it's not standing down. It is defiant. We understand that they're trying to rebuild their air defenses. They're trying to rebuild their ballistic missile capabilities. They may at some point even try to get back to the business of building a nuclear bomb. What are the odds, as you see it, of renewed conflict between Israel and Iran? And before even elections take place in Israel?
Before an election takes place, really depends on when the elections are. Is it a year from now? So the original date of the elections, or is it in February? Let me quote a senior source in Israel's cabinet. Israel does not want another confrontation with Iran. It is not planning another confrontation with Iran. Much of what was published in that regard is related to specific intelligence and specific worry with Western intelligence services. And sometimes it's taken out of some context. I think that the priorities, as you set them, Jonathan, building their air defenses, building ballistic missiles, and then maybe rebuilding their nuclear program, seem right to me personally, like what the Iranians are trying to do right now. And what worries the Israelis is less the air defenses, to the extent that they can build anything matching to the Israeli Air Force, and more the ballistic missile program. And that's a huge story. I would definitely note President Trump's both scripted and non-scripted appeal to the Iranian government to get to an agreement.
And that's where he wants it to go. He's still talking about peace, and he's trying to drive everybody in the right direction. It's a little bit like herding cats, as we would say. You get one to go in the right direction, and then you've got others that are going in the wrong direction. Yeah. It's not going to be easy, but it's good to see that the president is engaged.
No, I think that there are serious attempts made to try and reach a breakthrough there.
Yeah.
The SNAP sanctions are already in operation. They're pressuring the Iranians to get there. And I expect that we will see developments in that regard in the next few months.
All right. Well, this has been very enlightening. I want to thank you, Nadav Eyal, for joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right. That's all we got for the first episode since all the live hostages returned home to Israel. Hope you're liking the new format. If you're craving more think tanky smartness, check out the expert analysis on our website, fdd.org, and across all of our socials. And yes, folks, you still can make a generous tax-deductible donation anytime you wish at fdd.org/invest. Tune in Friday for another episode of the FDD Morning Brief. Until then, I'm Jonathan Schanzer signing off for FDD.